Donald Trump has announced that J.D. Vance and his wife, who is of Indian legacy, her family was born in India, and J.D. Vance met with the Indian government officials, and there may be a trade deal. Japan has been talking with us. They both want, us and Japan want a deal. Japan says we move the goalpost. We say they're not serious, but there's going to be a deal there. And more importantly, Donald Trump said he's willing to lower tariffs on China. Now, the left says, oh, he's caving. This was all unnecessary. You could interpret it that way, but it's more likely art of the deal. In other words, we're going to invade Panama, but we're not going to invade Panama. We just want Panama to let American companies run the exit and the entry to the canal, and that's probably going to happen. Canada's going to be the 51st state. No, it's not going to be the first state, but Canada should defend themselves and pay 2% of their GDP, and they need to address a $65 to $100 billion deficit. But we want to absorb Greenland. No, we don't. We want Denmark, the colonial power, with this huge North American colony. We want them to help them a little bit. And indeed, they're starting to put Greenland on their imperial flags, and they gave them $1 billion, and the base is secure, and they're probably, the Greenland people, 50,000 or so, will want U.S. security. So that is the art of the deal. And to get China to come and reduce its $300 billion trade surplus with the United States, Donald Trump talked about these huge tariffs. Now he will talk down, and we'll probably get a deal in art of the deal fashion. We saw that with NATO. He harangued them in 2018. They were furious, said he might not come to their aid. They haven't met their 2% 2014 promises. And guess what? They started to spend more in defense, timely so, because when the Ukraine war broke out, Europe had spent $1 billion more on defense expenditure. And more importantly, they had Finland and Sweden, two of the most muscular of all the European nations in terms of munitions and defense readiness, now both part of NATO. That worked. And I think the same thing is happening with trade. Here's the dynamic. The Europeans detest Donald Trump more than they see their self-interest. In other words, they would rather be on the outside of these trade negotiations and punish Donald Trump than they would be with the Asian powers and make a deal and profit mutually with the United States. And partly that's because they're akin to the American left. And as we saw with Jeremy Raskin, the representative in the Congress, he said to each country, if you cut a deal with this administration, the Trump administration, we're going to remember that. So the EU people want to help the American left, and one of the ways they think they can is to stonewall and watch the bond and stock market go down, and then they could come in later with more favorable concessions from the United States. The problem with that thinking is that if India cuts a deal and South Korea cuts a deal, and now they're talking about Japan, Taiwan, Australia, the Trump administration has already established openly, transparently, that those countries that are first to cut a deal will get the most favorable terms. And so the more people that come in and have a reciprocal agreement with the United States, I'm not saying it's going to be parity. I'm not saying we're going to get down to zero deficits. But if we cut this $1 trillion deficit by half, that will be a considerable achievement. The Europeans then will see that they're left out, and especially if we come to an accord in the next month or so with China, not that we're going to be able to force China to have no tariffs on their part, but we might be able to lower them and then make them buy American products to reduce that $300 billion. If that were to be true, then Europe has missed the boat. The bottom line, the trade war or tariff war was never really a war. It was just an effort to stop a 50-year cycle of chronic American trade deficits that had harmed the industrial interior. There's one caveat I would like to leave you with, and it's this. As long as Donald Trump talks about parity and the desirability of lowering our trade deficits and the unfairness of our trade partners and a idealized goal of no tariffs, he's got a winning issue. However, caveat, if he starts talking about tariffs in pre-1913 terms, before the income tax, when tariffs were the primary source of American revenue, in other words, if he thinks, I'm going to get all this money coming into the United States from these countries, they're going to have to give us this money, and then I can cut taxes on tips, I can do this, that's not going to work. No country will want to make a deal when they think that we're doing tariffs not in pursuit of fairness, but in pursuit of gouging them, whether true or not. So as long as he talks about any other aspect of tariffs except revenue raising, that is a losing political issue.
It's very important that he steps up, because Stephen Wyckoff, the special envoy, he's got too big of a portfolio. He's got the Ukraine war, he's got outreach to Russia, he's got the Iran nuclear deal, he's got the post-October 7th wars, and he's got these trade negotiations, individuals. So we need to reestablish the primacy of Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State. He's been weighing in on reforms at the State Department and also illegal immigration, but his portfolio should be the most important of these, either the Middle East war or, as I said to Jack not too long ago, or the Ukraine war. And here's what's happening. The European left, and the EU in aggregate, runs about a $200 billion trade surplus with us. By the way, that's one of the ways they rationalize their similar $300 billion trade deficit with China. Their attitude is, well, China's running a $1 trillion surplus. The United States is running a $1 trillion deficit. We're getting taken by the Chinese, but we'll just kind of take the Americans. And so we lose 300 to China, but we make 200 with the United States. So they're not going to cut a deal. And the pressure is mounting. They are of all the countries and blocs in the world, they are the closest with the American left. They're similar, almost joined at the hip. So you have all of this anger among the American left and the libertarian right. I've mentioned the Wall Street Journal. Every headline is Trump apocalypto. I mean, they do not like Trump. They hate him. They can't stand him. So what's happening, the Europeans are working with the left in a way, and they don't want a trade deal. And you get the EU commissioner, you get except for Maloney maybe, and some Eastern Europeans, their attitude is, we'll just wait him out, because the American left is putting so much pressure, he's going to cave. And the longer this goes on, I mean, if you lose 10%, 12% of the stock market, people start to get paranoid. So there is a time element here. Can Trump last and not crumble and get the trade deficit down, more foreign investment, get a better deal? Nobody's asking for complete parity or no, that would be nice, no tariffs. But he's trying to improve the situation, and the left does not want that to happen, because they think he'll get a big political benefit from that as the midterms come. And the Europeans don't want that to happen, because they're taking us to the cleaners as a way of making up for being taken by China. In a perfect world, as we said once, they should say, join with the United States. They said, you have a $300 billion, we have a $300 billion deficit with China, let's join forces, and if we each don't trade as much with China, we can trade more with each other. But they're not doing that, because they hate Trump as much as the left does. So the attention then turns to Asia. And there's about 5 to 6 players, both iconically and really in terms of GDP, that are big in trade. And that's India. We'll put China in a special category. Japan, Taiwan, South Korea, lesser the Philippines, Vietnam, Indonesia, and then Australia. And if he can get just one big deal, and he's already said the person who gets the first big deal gets the first best deal. In other words, the first cohort that comes in gets a more lax or a more compromised trade deal. So this is very important. If J.D. Vance is correct, and India would fall, if I could use that term, fall the first domino, then the Japanese are saying the Americans keep changing the goalposts. And then the Americans say, don't believe them. They just don't want anybody in that closed command economy. That will be the most difficult. South Korea, I think, will be more pliable, because there's a national security dimension. They do not want to anger the United States when they've got a lunatic with nuclear weapons, and the only thing that's stopping him is the nuclear shield of the United States. So all they need is India or South Korea as a big economy with big trade to be more fair rather than just free trade and have parity, and then I think there'll be a rush. But the question is, can he do this before the stock market goes berserk and the left and the Europeans basically caricature him as destroying the American economy, even though the inflation rate has been good, the jobs reports have been good, the oil prices have been good, everything's been good, but they're talking themselves into a recession. And that's one reason that Donald Trump wants to get a settlement in the Ukraine and doesn't want to be friendly as accused with Putin, but he just wants to go back to the Henry Kissinger, no better friend, no better enemy, China versus us versus Russia. And if he can, and he's trying to say to the Russians, you're underpopulated, you got this big border with China, you have a big border like India, so we're natural allies. What Joe Biden said when the Supreme Court said that the cancellation right before the midterm elections of student debt was unconstitutional. And remember what Joe Biden said? Well, they wouldn't let me do it. I got a way around it. I went around it. And then we should remember Chuck Schumer at head of a wild abortion mob at the doors of the Supreme Court. Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, you sowed the wind, you're going to reap the will. You're not going to know what's going to hit you. And then people swarmed the justice's house, including an assassin who wanted to kill Gorsuch, but called his sister and she talked him out of it. And then in addition to that, they wanted to pack the court. So there's been a war, and I know Andy McCarthy and like him, but I think the emphasis, if you ask yourself who is waging war against the left has. They were the ones that went after the court. They were the ones who tried to take Trump off the ballot. And all of those four indictments, those four local, state, federal prosecutors, every single one is facing real problems. Fannie Willis was taken off the case for the Nathan Wade unethical. She's under investigation. She was by the Georgia state legislature. A committee is investigating her for unethical and maybe illegal conduct. She was just fined over $50,000 for refusing to turn over documents. That whole thing is just a collapse because she is facing probably charges. And then Jack Smith got $140,000 in free legal fees. He never reported. He was the federal prosecutor. Then we go to Letitia James, who said that Donald Trump had fraudulently conspired to fill out a real estate form. And now we find out that's exactly what she did. She said she was married to her father, said she lived out of state as her primary residence, and then she lied about her kind of apartment units. She did everything that she accused of Donald Trump. So my point is that they have systematically abused the legal system, the left. So Andy is now mad at Donald Trump, but he doesn't quite get the political nature. And this is what a Harvard-Harris poll just showed. 75% of Americans want illegal aliens who have committed crimes, are involved in criminal activity, to be deported. And their way of thinking goes like this, Andy. Joe Biden broke the law. Alejandro Mayorkas was impeached for breaking the law. A federal law says you cannot cross the border of the United States when you please and illegally enter. You can visit the United States if you have a passport and you're from a country that does not, require visas. We don't require that country. Or you can come through at San Diego or other legal points and visit. You cannot just walk across. You can't do that with any country. Somewhere between 8 and 12 million people did that. 10, and now there's 20. No, there was 20 here. Yale studies showed that years ago. So now we have probably 30 million. But the point is, most people, as the polls show, said, well, wait a minute. None of you people who are suing on the left were bothered that they had destroyed the law. In other words, you allowed illegal aliens to come across and you didn't enforce the law. You were subversive. You were insurrectionary. Same thing with sanctuary cities. They break the law. And so, in the American mind, the collective American mind, it goes something like this, Andy. It goes like this. Somebody comes across illegally without permission. Then he resides illegally. He has abused our legal system. He has stuck his nose up. We don't like you. We don't even want to get near you. When we get a court hearing and they pick it, we don't go. And then all of a sudden when he's deported, as he should never have been let in, then all of a sudden we have to give the legal system to him, as if the Constitution is a suicide pact. The other thing is that Andy made the point that he was with gang members at Home Depot. They had drugs and money. There were informants that said he was. There were 2 prior justices. He made the point they weren't justices, they were arbitrators, immigrant. Yeah. So, and they said that there was good reason, given that he had a nickname, a gang nickname. He had gang insignia, tattoos. They thought it was good enough to deport him. And then another judge on appeal held that he shouldn't be deported to El Salvador because he might be in danger. Didn't say he couldn't be deported. And then there was a traffic incident where a Tennessee patrolman pulled him over. He had 7 people all registered at the same house. They wouldn't give accurate information. He had a suspended driver's license. He was breaking the law. He should have been deported right then. They called him, wanted to deport him. The FBI wouldn't let him do it. They asked the FBI if they would indict them for trafficking, or they didn't want to do that. And then, of course, the piece de resistance was his girlfriend, and he beat her. He tore her clothes off. He hit her. And so the American people say, Andy, we let in by mistake a spousal abuser who hits women and beats them up and hit her in the eye, and was probably trafficking and was known to among most people as a gang member. And you're asking, well, was he ever indicted and convicted and sentenced? And the answer is no. He's right about that. But the answer the American people would say is, I don't care. He's a guest to my house. If somebody comes in to my house and breaks windows, I don't have to evict him pending a policeman to come here, investigate, and say, Victor, there's good evidence that he broke your windows, and we're going to arrest him. And then I wait while he's in my house. And then he's convicted a year later. And then I say, now you have to leave. No, I just kick him out. I didn't invite him. That's the thinking. That's the thinking behind that's why 80%, almost 75% of the American people want him gone. The other issue is he's not a Maryland man. He is an El Salvador citizen. He was in El Salvador, and he fled because of gang affiliation. It's controversial whether he was just an innocent person who never tattooed himself. He never had gang insignia originally, but he was driven out by gangs who were threatening his family, or he was in a gang, and that was anyway, he left. And then he was deported. Now he's back. So he's a citizen of El Salvador. So you have this Orwellian situation where you have all these democratic grandees, as if they're 19th century Yankee imperialists, traipsing down to a Latin American country and then taking it over, kind of just going in there and saying to the president, hey, your citizen, we want him. It's almost like you've got to deport your citizen because we want him. And we don't want him to put him in jail. We want him for political purposes because we're running a campaign against Donald Trump. So he's very valuable to us. And then they don't get the final thing about this is, why would he wear a short sleeve shirt at this margarita party with Senator Van Hollen? Why wouldn't you cover up all those tattoos? Did you see them? They were all visible. So he's there and he's having, I don't know whether it was a setup or they ordered margaritas and then they had thought better of it, or the waiter didn't like them and just put them there for props. But it was really bad. And then it just resonated. What is it with you people? Why do you ignore the people in the Rio Grande Valley and in New York City that have been victimized, whether financially or shortage, a dearth of social services by illegal aliens? Why do you always get excited about a criminal? He is a criminal. He's been engaged, and you make him the cause célèbre, and then he's a referendum on lawfare. Not Fannie Willis, not trying to get Trump off the ballot, not what Chuck Schumer said about the court. Donald Trump is the threat because he deported somebody. Probably mistakenly. They didn't know. They just looked at him and they saw the gang insignia, and they looked at his prior record, and they didn't see that there had been a hold on him not to go to El Salvador. What I think they should do is say, okay, bring him back for a day or two and redeport, and then send him back. But El Salvador has a say in it. It's their citizen. We don't have people from Germany telling us. We don't go over to Germany and say, we had a German guy living in the United States. You got to make him come back here because he wanted to. And Germany says, no, we think he's a gang member and we want to put him in jail. And we say, well, we didn't convict him. And Germany says, I don't care. He's a German citizen and he's on German soil and we're going to investigate him. Well, no, we're the United States. We found out that he had criminal behaviors, but we didn't indict him, so you give him back to us. And they say, Germany says, well, wait a minute, he's not even got a green card. He didn't even apply for citizenship. He's a German citizen, and you're coming on our soil and telling us what I have to do to a German that I don't like, one of my own people, because I think he's a gang member? Robert Hur found that Joe Biden, in, I think, 4 unsecured locations going back at least 30 years, had classified documents. He also found out that Joe Biden never willingly offered to come forward and point that out to federal investigators. He only did so when he had appointed a special counsel. And then when somebody went to him and said, if you appointed a special counsel to go after Donald Trump for improperly taking out documents, do you think you ever did it? Because somebody will find out. Oh, yeah, I'll come forward, but I'll volunteer it, so it'll be different. And then third, after he went through all of this, he found out that it was illegal. And then, unlike Donald Trump, I mean, they had said Donald Trump was crazy. Remember that? That he had to he took the Montreal Cognitive Assessment. That was what, and Rod Rosenstein was going to wear a wire with Andrew McCabe and find him, crazy. So if they thought Joe Biden was crazy or demented, and that therefore he was not criminally liable, maybe they could have said that about Trump. Did Tim Kaine ever say, let me just put it all in perspective, is firing 2 or 3 of your top aides a cause for dismissal, or overseeing the entire collapse of the American project in Afghanistan, the murder, killing of 13 Marines, the surrender of $1 billion embassy, a $300 million retrofitted Bagram Air Force Base, and the entire $50 billion munitions stash from planes, and that they're all in terrorist hands now in the international terrorist market. That's what Lloyd Austin did. I didn't hear anything from Tim Kaine. So why is he firing people? Because and I wrote about it in the New Criterion about the paradoxes of the MAGA movement. The MAGA movement, in theory, says we are Jacksonian. Some of the MAGA people interpret that as neo-isolations. The Middle East isn't worth it. It's not worth the bones of one, to paraphrase Bismarck, one American Marine to go over there. They're all hopeless. Let's just keep out, build our Fortress America. And the other is, well, we don't go nation building after the disasters, but we're Jacksonians. No better friend, no worse enemy, don't tread on me. So we're like a tiger. We're crouching. And you screw around with us, the Houthis, you say you're going to get a bomb and destroy our friend Israel. You go slaughter a bunch of people on October 7th. You hit installations in Syria. We're going to hit you hard. And that's the tension. So he's got the MAGA people telling Pete Hegseth, are you with, we want to know, are you with J.D. Vance? Or are you with Waltz and the interventionist? Or are you neutral, like Marco Rubio? And when you had that leaked conversation, he went back and forth. It kind of ended up more with a J.D. Vance people, but he's also a Jacksonian. So the people who want him to be Jacksonian and retaliate, or, have a big presence around the world and don't take crap from anybody and restore deterrence, they're leaking about the MAGA people. And the MAGA people are saying these are war hawks. And some of them have gone to Tucker Carlson and said, I think 2 of the 3 were MAGA people. And I think one of them may have been a counter casualty who was a hawk. But they're going to people like Tucker and everything and saying the war people want to go by. And when I define hawks versus neo-isolationists, the issue that everybody's discussing in the Defense Department, as in the State Department, is whether to preemptively take out the nuclear program in Iran. So there's people in the Defense Department, as well as the State Department, they're going to Hegseth and they're saying, look, no one has ever trusted the Iranians. They are pathological liars. They are in the most vulnerable position in their entire history. Their air defenses are a shambles. The Houthis are emasculated. Hamas is almost non-existent. The formidable Hezbollah, they're in disarray. Their client in Syria, Assad, is kaput. If you're ever going to stop them from the bomb, given their lying and duplicity, and look at the Obama deal, it was completely crafted to let them have a bomb in 10 years. Now is the time. You can join the Israelis and you can go in there and bomb it and get commandos and just wipe it out. And that might cause internal revolution. And then there is the other side and said, first of all, it's none of our business to go in there and interfere. And if they say that they're going to get rid of the bomb, they're probably lying, but we can deal with it when they get a bomb. And that's Israel's problem, not ours. That's the tension. So each side are leaking to make the other side look like they're ridiculous. And he's new. He's only been there 90 days. So he's got to decide where his president is. And Donald Trump is in both camps.
If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share your thoughts in the comments below. Make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss any of our latest content.